This is Autopsy, a podcast about the hidden theology beneath ordinary Christian life. Every episode, we examine the ideas, assumptions, and theology that shape how we live, suffer, worship, and believe. Using scripture and the wisdom of the church, past and present, we ask a simple question: what if theology explains more of your life than you think? I'm Chris Ruwalt, and this is Autopsy. Last episode, we ended somewhere a little bit unsettling. We said desire, or when desire goes deep enough, it doesn't stay simply desire. A will becomes a want becomes a habit becomes a necessity, and a necessity eventually feels like identity. And then the last line of the episode, where we left everything sort of hanging, was this: that when desire goes deep enough, it stops being desire and becomes worship. And that's where we pick it up today. The claim is simple, maybe the most important claim that we will ever make on this podcast. You are a worshiper. Not you might be a worshiper, not you could be a worshiper if you joined a religion or if you went to church. You are already a worshiper. And the only question is, what is it that you worship? Imagine someone followed you for a week. You gave them total access, no closed doors, no privacy. They read every line of your calendar. They saw every charge on your bank statement. They heard every anxious thought that kept you awake at 2 o'clock in the morning. And at the end of the week, they had to sit down and write a single report answering one question: what is this person actually devoted to? Now, sit in the discomfort of that, because the honest answer is almost never the answer that we give out loud. There's the life that we say we value. There are the things we say we value. And then there is the life that our money and our time and our worry actually reveal. And the gap between those two is the most revealing thing about any of us. None of us comes with a switch that turns worship off. We come with a needle, and the needle is always pointing somewhere. It's always pointing to something. You will never once catch a human being not worshiping something. You will only catch them worshiping something they would not have called worship. Well, in the 4th century, Augustine goes looking for what he actually loves. And he does something strange. He sort of interrogates the world. He writes these words: I asked the earth and I answered, I asked the earth and it answered, I am not he. I asked the sea, I asked the wind, I asked the sky, I asked the stars, and every one of them said the same thing: we are not your God. And then they said one more thing: he made us. Every created thing pressed hard enough confesses two things simultaneously. Number one, I am not the thing you are looking for. And number two, I point past myself to the one who is. The tragedy is that we don't press. We stop at the created thing and we ask it to be God. Everybody hears the word worship, and automatically we think of a building, we think of a room, we think of Sunday morning, singing, lifted hands, an activity that you either decide to attend or skip. But in reality, that is worship defined in its most narrow sense. In Romans 1, Paul actually talks about worship, and he uses the word in a much broader way. To worship is to assign ultimate truth. Listen for it in the word itself: worth-ship. It is where your ultimate trust goes. It's where your ultimate allegiance goes. It's where your ultimate love is settled. By that definition, everyone worships, even the person who has never set foot in a church. When we think of it like this, worship is not a religious activity, it is a human condition. Well, in his 20s, Augustine is chasing what he calls the emptiness of popular praise. He's winning poetry contests. He's seeking out applause, the ancient gold medals in the literary world. And one day, a sorcerer offers him a deal. And the deal is, let me sacrifice some animals, and I will guarantee you that you will win the next competition. And Augustine's writing about this, that he says that he was disgusted and he refuses, and he says he would not let a single fly be killed in order to win a crown of gold. It sounds like the line of a man of principle. But the older Augustine is looking back and he tells the truth about the younger one. He did not refuse the sacrifice out of love for anything higher. He refused it because he was already the sacrifice. He was his own offering laid on the altar. And he writes that a soul chasing illusions commits fornication against the truth. Let me read that again. A soul chasing illusions commits fornication against the truth. He says it's like feeding the wind. He didn't need the wizard to kill anything. He was the thing being killed. And he never once called it worship. He called it ambition. So, what do we put on the altar? Career, family, politics, comfort, reputation. None of those things are bad things, which is exactly the trap. The moment a good thing becomes the ultimate thing, now you're talking about something that you consider to be sacred. And the sacred things that we hold, whatever they are, you defend them. You can't joke about them. No one else can joke about them. They cannot be questioned. Watch what a person cannot stand to have mocked, and you will have found what they worship. Augustine hands us two of his own. The first is strange until you understand what it is for. He becomes obsessed with astrologers. He calls them the mathematicians. A wise old physician begs him to throw all of these books out. He tells him he's studied the art himself and he quit. The old physician tells him, I've studied this and it's nothing but chance dressed up as fate. But Augustine can't let go of it. And he tells us why. The astrologers told him, and here's what they said: the cause of thy sin is inevitably determined in heaven. Venus did it, Saturn did it, Mars did it, the stars did it, not me. Hear what the idol does. It does not promise success, it promises innocence. If the stars are to blame, then Augustine can't be blamed. If the stars are to be blamed, then I can't be blamed. We reach for the same thing constantly. I can't help it. It's just my personality type. The universe is rigged against me. I was always going to end up like this. Any system that lifts the weight of our failures off of our own shoulders and sets it on something we cannot be blamed for is doing the work of a god, little g. It's just wearing a lab coat or a horoscope. The second idol that Augustine mentions hits a little closer to home. He writes an entire book and dedicates it to a famous speaker of his time. This is a man he has never met, he's never seen. He loved him entirely because of what other people said about him. And years later, he asks himself the brutal question: did I really love the man, or did I love the crowd that loved him? And he comes to the conclusion that the answer to the question is the crowd. It's those same people that Augustine admits that if they had mocked this man, Augustine admits that he would have felt nothing. He describes his own soul as being blown back and forth by what he calls the gales of tongues, the winds of public opinion. That's the reputation idol exactly. Your worth, your mood, your sense of being okay, rising and falling on what a crowd of people you will never meet happens to be saying about you. Refresh, and the wind shifts. Refresh again. And here's the part that should unsettle those of us who think of ourselves as being believers or religious people the most. Augustine writes all of this down not as a wild young man, but as a bishop. He's writing decades after his conversion. He sits down and he audits one ordinary day and he finds worship just leaking out everywhere. He thinks about a meal that he ate, and he admits he cannot always tell where one need ends and a craving begins, and he calls eating a daily war. He examines what catches his eye, a spider in the corner trapping a fly. He writes, can pull me straight out of my prayer. He notices the darker pull, the way people slow down and the crowd around a body by the side of the road. The need to feel something, even if the something is horror and disgust. It is the 4th century version of the feed at 11 o'clock at night. He examines praise, and there he finds the subtlest trap of all. A man can be proud of how little he needs praise, but then the contempt of vanity quietly becomes a new vanity. There's no neutral place. Every ordinary moment is bending towards something. When Augustine was a young teacher in his hometown, he had a friend. And this friend was the same age. They grew up together. They went to school together. They played together. Well, one day the friend caught a fever. And while he lay unconscious, he was baptized. Well, he eventually recovered, and when he got better, Augustine tried to make a joke about it. And the friend turned on him. And Augustine said it was like an enemy told me to stop with the jokes. And a few days later, the fever came back and the friend died. And Augustine doesn't grieve, his life falls apart. Whatever I beheld was death, he writes. Whatever I beheld was death. His hometown became a torment. Every familiar place was now unbearable because his friend was no longer there. He ran away from the city just to be somewhere else. He just wanted to go someplace that the friend had never been. Now, you might stop me here and you might say something like, well, if my closest friend died, I would be destroyed too. Isn't that just grief? And Augustine would agree. The love was not the sin, and the pain was real, but it was the total collapse that revealed something. And what it revealed was this: he had asked a mortal friend to carry the weight of his existence. He writes about this, and he says he had poured his soul upon the dust. Wretched, he concludes, wretched is every soul bound by the friendship of perishable things. And here's the test you can run on yourself. If you lost the thing, whatever the thing is, and felt deep grief, that is love. If you lost it and felt like you no longer had a right to exist, then it's not just you love that thing had become an idol to you. Lose the job and feel crushed, that's grief. Lose the job and feel erased, that tells you the job was holding up something that it was never strong enough to hold in the first place. The death did not create the disorder, it exposed the disorder. The arrangement was invisible. As long as the friend was alive, death just sort of turned the lights on. Loss tells you what you are actually worshiping. So we worship, and we worship a lot of things. And in the question in book 10 of Augustine's Confessions is whether underneath all of it there is one thing everyone is after. And Augustine says yes. Everyone wants to be happy. Not happy as in a mood, happy as in a life that is finally well, finally full, finally at rest, finally at whole. And he has this very sharp proof. He says, ask two people if they will go to war. One says yes, one says no. So people want different things. But ask two people who have ever lived whether they want to be happy, and both of them will say yes. And they will answer instantly with no hesitation whatsoever. Nobody has to be talked into happiness. And then he comes to a strange question. How can everyone want something they've never fully had? You can only long for what you somehow already know. So, where did the whole human race get the memory of a happiness that none of us has ever really experienced? And his answer is the hinge of the whole issue. He says the desire is not random, it's not 1,000 little wants, it is one ultimate desire wearing 1,000 disguises. Under the career, under the relationship, under the comfort, under the praise, there is a single hunger for a good big enough to be the highest good, for a joy that never runs out, never diminishes. Augustine says it is to rejoice, and here's what he writes: to thee, of thee, for thee. This is it, and there is no other. We were not built to want many ultimate things. We were built to want one ultimate thing. And we keep handing that role, that one role, to things that were not created for it. So here's what Christianity is not. Christianity is not a program that takes non-worshipers and turns them into worshipers. There are no non-worshipers to convert. There are only worshipers who are worshiping the wrong thing. So the gospel does not manufacture worship. It redirects it. It takes a mind already running at full power, a heart already aimed at the career, the child, the reputation, the feed, the marriage, the spouse, and it turns it toward the only object that can actually bear the weight. And the way back is the one move the proud heart does not want to make. Augustine first tried to reach God sheerly through his intellect. The philosophers of his day taught that there was a ladder. And if you climb the ladder long enough, and if you climb high enough through your own mind and through your own reason, you can arrive at this place of the divine. But he realized that the ladder was just pride. One more attempt to save himself by himself. And he concludes the gap is not crossed by climbing. It was actually crossed by someone else. Not who climbed up, but who climbed down, who came down. A mediator, mortal with men, completely righteous with God, who brings the distance through humility, not through brilliance. And so what this says, and what Christianity says, is that you do not ascend to the object of worship. The object of worship comes down to you. And so the friend, the one whose death unmade him, Augustine finally finds the answer that he could not find before. And the answer is not don't love people, but love them in God. He alone loses none dear to him, to whom all are dear in him who cannot be lost. The problem was never that he lost his friend. The problem was that he was giving ultimate love to a mortal. Redirected to God, the love is not destroyed, it's made safe and it's held secure. So that means that when God is on the throne, the career, the family, the comfort, the relationship do not disappear. They come down off the altar and become what they were always meant to be. And what they were always meant to be were gifts, not gods. Things you can love freely because you have stopped expecting them to save you. Every created thing tells you this the whole time. I am not he. He made me. So go back to the report that we started off talking about, the one where a stranger would write after a week inside your life. Look at the calendar, look at the bank statement, look at the search history, look at the thing you reach for first, look at the thing you would be most afraid to lose. That's your altar. That's where you have been kneeling the whole time. The gospel's claim is not that you should start worshiping. The gospel's claim is that the thing you were built to worship has come looking for you. And I want to leave you with one last puzzle from Augustine. Augustine gets stuck on the idea of forgetting. If forgetfulness is just the absence of memory, how is it that you can remember that you forgot something? Think of that moment where a name was on the tip of your tongue. Someone offers you a wrong name and you instantly know that's not it. That's not the right name. And you keep rejecting the wrong answers until the right one clicks. Maybe that's what this is. Maybe the restless search through the crowd, through the career and the feed is not us trying to learn something new. Maybe it is us trying to remember something we were made for and lost. A joy we have somehow managed to remember that we forgot. But here's where it turns strange. And this is where we go next time. You can have your worship pointed at the right thing. You can believe the gospel. You can believe the whole thing is absolutely true and still wake up feeling nothing. The truth can be there, but with no warmth. You can go through the motions when the fire is completely out. Why do Christians who believe the right things sometimes go numb? So next episode, we'll sit down with Martin Lloyd-Jones and we'll ask the question, why so much of the Christian life is spent, his words, spiritually numb? Thanks for listening to Autopsy. The goal of this podcast is not merely to think about and teach theology. It is to help us see our lives more truthfully in the light of God, Scripture, and the wisdom of those who've gone before us. If you enjoyed the episode, subscribe, share it, and join us next time. And until then, do not settle for shallow experiences and explanations of the Christian life.